Good morning, everybody. I wanted to give you an update on my juice fast. So the first go around, when I started it on March 1st, I lasted, I want to say about 10 days. And toward the end of those 10 days, I started eating some processed foods again. It was just really hard to stay on it. But even from the beginning, I was sleeping better. After that juice fast, I dropped 6 pounds. Now, of course, the first few you drop is water weight, and then comes the fat loss. But I managed to keep those 6 pounds off by the time I started my next juice fast, which was my restart, getting back on the wagon. So I started that juice fast, and after about, I want to say like 3 or 4 days into it, started with the processed food again. It was hard for me to stay on it. And right at that time, I got a tick bite. Now, I've had about 5 or 6 tick bites in my life, and it's never been an issue. I've never had to take medication for it. But this time, it was in a weird spot, and I had to really, like, with a safety pin and tweezers, disinfect it, like trying to really dig it out of my side. And it was really hard to get out. So it was left like a little raised bump. It wasn't a bullseye rash, but it was just like red and a little elevated, like a little raised bump. So I went to my nurse practitioner, and she didn't like that it was red. And she says, well, just to be on the safe side, let's put you on just 10 days of preventative antibiotics. So I said, all right, I'm fine with that. I don't take antibiotics all the time. But I was like, it is red, and it kind of made me a little nervous too. So once you're on heavy antibiotics, you cannot be juice fasting. So I got off of that. And what I decided to do was try to eat a high raw diet, high raw fruits, raw vegetables, seeds and nuts. So yesterday morning, it was Easter Sunday, and I know that if I would have gone, say, to a place where it's like, say, like an all-you-can-eat buffet or like a big gathering or anything like that, where there's lots of food, I knew I was going to be out of control, and it was going to start there, and then I was going to leave there, and then I was going to go get more crap food, just because that's, food addiction and emotional eating too. So I had a smoothie in the morning, and I had a green juice around lunch, which was quite satisfying. It was the lemon ginger blast with a little tweak. There was like, I added one more cucumber, a little less celery, and one more apple to make it a little sweeter, because I really had enough of the lemon ginger blast after my attempt at the juice fast. So my friends came to visit for me to help them with their iPhones. They were having some issues with their iPhones, so they came over to visit, and we had a nice visit. And after they left, I was so hungry because I hadn't eaten anything, and I had things in the fridge I could have eaten, but I'm like, it's Easter Sunday, find excuses. So I went out to eat, and all I had was an appetizer. But of course, as in most restaurants, appetizers are like deep fried. And I noticed as soon as I started, like after a few bites, like after a couple of minutes, I just felt depressed. And I'm like, oh my God, this is, when you start eating healthy, or even for the day, you start the day eating healthy in the morning, and then you have something that's just total crap in the afternoon, you will feel it. But I was just really surprised at how strongly I felt that pull of energy, and just felt really down. I'm like, damn, this sucks, So I didn't overeat. I just had a little bit, enough to feel just almost full, and I left at that point. But I went across the street, and I got myself a latte. And I drove home, sipping on the latte, and a couple hours later, I was on the phone with a friend of mine catching up. And as I was telling her about all this that I've been doing, she wasn't aware of it, I noticed that I'm like, when did I stop feeling that weighed down, depressed feeling? I'm like, man, it was when I started having that latte. So this is what we do. And I think it's a cycle for so many of us. We get into this cycle of eating processed food, even if it's not sugar, eating processed food, and it brings us down, it saps our energy. And then what do? We need to get picked up again, right? We need a high, not like a drug high, but we need to get a high again. And that's when we resort to sugar. It reminds me of these caffeine and sugar drinks that a lot of people drink. And I see this a lot in people that do physical labor, like contractors, people that do service work on homes and on property. And they have hard physical labor. They have to have the energy and be awake for several hours doing this work. Or driving a lot, like a truck driver, let's say, driving a lot. And they just suck down these drinks that are full of caffeine and sugar and provide, absolutely no nutrition. And what all that does is the caffeine and the sugar wears down our adrenals so that we need more of it going forward to even feel normal. Not even to feel stimulated and energetic, but just to feel normal. That's how processed food and sugar in general work. So, and the only way to really rehab your adrenal glands, which control like all these other glands in the body and all the hormones, the only real way to do that is to get off of the caffeine and the sugar. And there are other things that affect the adrenal glands. There's a great book I read many years ago called The Adrenal Fatigue Syndrome. And oh my God, did that pertain to me back in the day, because I was eating processed food. Now, over the years, as time went on, that became worse for me because I got off of those plans and went back to the processed foods. But the syndrome made total sense. And it's an easy, cheap fix. I mean, it's a simple fix. It's getting off the caffeine, the sugar, the processed foods, getting off the, especially like the processed grains. And there are other things that can affect the adrenal glands too. Fluoridated water, the pollution, stress, and I've been through quite my share in the last 6 years. So now it's just a process of giving my body the time and space to heal. And I think we all need that if we are to truly heal. So like I said, right now I'm on antibiotics, to circle back to that. And we'll see where to go to after I finish the course. All right. So I hope you have a wonderful week, and I'll be back with some other videos. Bye.